Hi, everybody. Welcome to my favorite shitty movie. It's very exciting to do my favorite shitty movie on the evening before Halloween. Where I grew up, it was called Cabbage Night, and it was the night that the ruffians went out and egged your front door or toilet papered the trees in your yard. Um, I don't know why they called it Cabbage Night. I never witnessed any cabbages being thrown, but I thought that would have been cool if they'd added that in addition to the toilet paper and the eggs, just some rotten cabbage heads just thrown at your door to really let you know that the season's going on. But they don't do that around where I live now. Thank goodness. I'm surprised they don't because of the flags they wave off the back of their trucks. I expect more rotten cabbages thrown at my door, but that's neither here nor there. We're here tonight. I'm very excited. I've been trying to get our guest tonight, actor Dave Florek, on the show for so long, and he's been very hesitant and concerned because he doesn't understand what's good about shitty movies. So I can't wait for you to hear him talk about tonight's movie, which is Stigmata. Starring Patricia Arquette and Gabriel Byrne, and we might have a little bit of extra tidbit surprise thanks to my co-host Tracy, who I need to bring into the show so she can let us know what's up.
Hello, Cabbage Night. They didn't have that in Orange County.
I don't know why they called it Cabbage Night, but that's what it was called. It's Cabbage Night.
Wow. It doesn't sound as cool. It doesn't sound as cool as like Sam Hain, like that. Like that's more like Halloween forward. I'm so stoked that we're talking about Stigmata, because I love this movie when I first saw it. I saw it twice in the theaters, which I think is so rare today that I would ever do something like that without Sandra Bullock being involved. But I just loved this movie. I love genre, and revisiting it for the show was really fun. Because again, it's a reoccurring theme on this show. It's so lovely to see a movie that's like not based on IP. It's an original screenplay. Obviously, it's paying homage to, Exorcist and Damien and all the good stuff, as you would have to do if you're going to tread this territory. But it's also it comes out in 1999. So take your brain back to 1999. Clinton is in office. Everyone's worried about Y2K. I never understood why. It's a little bit like the Obama suit where it's beige and he looked hot. And everyone's like, it's a scandal. I'm like, it's a scandal how good looking he is, but I don't think it's a scandal the way, I don't know, like stealing classified information might be. But that's a different topic. But I loved this film, and I remembered vividly seeing it going, oh my God, thank God Patricia Arquette is anchoring, again, a studio film. This is an MGM movie. And it was the beginning, right? I mean, she would go on 15 years later and win an Oscar or so, but she's just terrific and winning and quirky. And I miss that kind of lead actress in an original movie. And, I was looking it up, and the director, Rupert Wainwright, he got $20 million, at least that's the number that's affixed officially, to make this movie. $29 million in 1999 is really, $29 million now would be great. And so I just really appreciate that you have a female lead in a thriller that's not based on IP. And it's, to your point, it's super stylistic. It's very of its time, but I think its time was a hell of a lot more fun than ours.
Well, and 99 is a lot of people think that 1999 was the best year of movies ever. A lot of people say that.
So 1939 versus 1999, right? That's the golden year where you get going through the way.
I guess. I don't know. But, everybody has, it's like in the 80s. It's like 1984 is the best year for movies in the 80s. And when you look at it, you're you look at the list of movies that came out in 84 versus all the other 1980s years. Yeah. There are more very recognizable. It feels weird to say, oh, they all came out in the same year.
Yeah,
and 99, 99 definitely has that effect on me. When I consider all that came out, and Stigmata is like a small one that came out, in the same year as The Matrix and shit like that.
Yeah, exactly. And also The Sixth Sense and all that kind of stuff. And it was, again, I think that Sixth Sense, The End of Days, also co-starring Gabriel Byrne, comes out the same year. Ironically, Gabriel Byrne is nominated for a Razzie for film we're here to talk about tonight, and End of Days. They lose out to Jar Jar Binks, appropriately. I don't think Gabriel Byrne's bad in this film. I think he's the first hot priest. I was joking with Rupert today. I was like, dude, long before Andrew Scott came along in Fleabag, I think you had the hot priest and Gabriel Byrne in your picture. But our special surprise for viewers tonight, the great Rupert Wainwright is a pal I've developed with him. He's a wonderful director. He's a great guy. He's a bon vivant. He's a sailor. He's just cool. And I called him up and I said, please forgive the title of our podcast, but we have an amazing guest who really likes your film and wants to talk about it. It's always a Gen X touchstone, and we always punch up. It's with love. We love your movie. Would you want to talk about it a little bit? And so he was flying out of LAX today. I picked him up at a very small window where, true version, I was doing my Frankie page, getting a haircut. So if you're like, why is Tracy in a salon and why is Rupert Everett in LAX? That's the reason. So I want to thank Rupert for playing ball and being such a great sport. He has promised to come on this podcast and talk about one of his favorite shitty movies. Rupert, I'm going to hold you that because you're amazing. So what we're going to do for our fans tonight is we're going to run the first question that he answered. And then we're going to save the rest of his interview, make it a breakout on our page. It'll be on the audio version for those listening after our show concludes. We'll figure out how to do that in post. It'll be a special kind of bonus edition of this. But I just wanted to give a major shout out to Rupert because it's very generous of him to give us our time and forgive us for the title. So with that, here we go.
Let's bring on our guest so he can enjoy, because we can be heard when I share my screen and the interview comes up. So maybe we'll have things to say, and that's okay.
Awesome.
But he is, like I said, I've been trying to get him on the show for a while. I finally broke him down. His name is Dave Florek. He's a great actor. He's been in every TV show, Justified. He's been in Ghostbusters 2. Most importantly to me, he's been in a movie called Fuzz Track City, where we shared a mouthwash together.
Kinky.
It's pretty weird. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dave Florek.
Yay, Dave.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Yeah. Thanks for a couple of things I wanted to say, just because you guys were making me think of stuff. Back where I grew up in Detroit, it wasn't Cabbage Night, it was Devil's Night.
Yeah. Oh yeah, sure, yeah. I've heard it.
Which was pretty destructive. And you talk about Gabriel Byrne being the first sort of hot priest. Maybe you're forgetting Bing Crosby and the Bells of St. Mary. I don't know.
Oh, that's a good point.
I heard he was such a mean guy. It's hard. He was a little bastard, that Bing.
I was gonna bring up the '80s movie, horror movie, The Unholy, but I couldn't remember the lead actor's name who plays the hot priest in that, which is all about.
Well, we've had Heath Ledger.
Oh, there could be The Other too. Wasn't that a priest? The Other? Wasn't that a priest in that?
The Other?
Or The Others with Nicole Kidman? I don't know.
The Others with Nicole Kidman? I don't know. I don't know. I can't remember if there was
The Others is so turn of the screw without officially being turn of the screw. I don't know what to do with that movie. It's like, wow. I'm like, okay, why did you use those keys and open another door for an hour and a half? I don't know.
So, Dave.
Yes.
Take your best shot and sort of define what it is for you personally that makes a great shitty movie. What is a terrible movie that's so watchable that you can't stop watching? What does that mean?
Yeah, no, I've thought about this since you and I spoke, Todd, and have spent many hours with my therapist. Because, I went around and around because my wife and I have this thing, we call it the 15-minute stink test. If we start watching something and we'll look at each other and go, what do you think? And, we turn on something else. But I'll tell you, a really shitty movie that I would watch is if it frankly, is if it makes me laugh. Okay. If it's, and like if I can mention other movies, Scarface to me.
Yeah.
I laugh my ass off at.
Yeah.
I'm tired of this shit. I mean, the other one, and I can't remember the name of this movie, but it was Philip Seymour Hoffman and Robert De Niro. Great actors, by the way.
Yeah.
And all I remember is De Niro had like some speech impediment, so he was like, mooing. Seymour Hoffman was like in a dress and high heels.
Oh, it's a Joel Schumacher film.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, and I cannot remember the name.
I was laughing my ass off. So I would say, okay, to me, those are crappy movies.
Yeah.
That I would watch.
Yeah.
Just so I could, get a good laugh.
This is the thing, and this is what I love about this show. We do punch up, and it's always with love. And like, this is why I knew Todd and I were like so perfect to do this show together. He's a nerd and lover of film of the first order, which I so appreciate. Like, I'm the girl who's like, yeah, Sleepaway Camp 1 and 2. And he's like, what about 3? And I'm like, okay, like he's that guy. But what I love about it is like, the truth be told, it's like, yeah, sure, I love Ingmar Bergman. Through a Glass Darkly is fabulous. But am I going to watch that, or am I going to watch Tremors? I'm going to watch Tremors every time. And there's something about being entertained, and if you're in the right mood, you should be seeing Ingmar Bergman, but you should also be watching Smokey and the Bandit. And that's what's awesome about movies. And so this show is really dedicated to, we're aware we're not doing Cuckoo's Nest here, but
that's what I think that's what confused me a little bit.
Yeah.
That, like, say, take Smokey and the Bandit.
Yeah.
It's silly, entertaining.
Yeah.
But see, I wouldn't call it a crappy movie.
I don't think so either.
Exactly what I wanted.
And we've actually done that movie on this show somewhat recently. And what is lovely about it was in a different era. You've got, no one was a bigger star than Burt Reynolds when that came out. You have Sally Field, who's about to become Norma Ray, but is like sort of Gidget transitioning into like one of our best serious actresses.
And you had Ralph Cramden.
Yeah, you Jackie Gleason forever, right? It's like a Buford T. Justice. You had all that stuff going on. But the stakes of that movie is like, you guys, we have to get beer from point A to point B, eastbound and down.
Oh, God. Who was it? Jerry Reed? Was that Jerry? That was Jerry Reed.
With his dog. It's like, but there's something joyful about that. And I think what I like about the show is that we try to highlight movies. This is not the best of times. I don't think that's a controversial statement. And so we go to films, we go to cinema to escape. And sometimes you just want something that's really fun. And I love that you picked this film tonight because it is a cult film. It has emerged. It is one that is talked about a lot. When we spoke to Rupert today, he had mentioned that one of his friends who does a big podcast in the UK has been asking him to do a director's commentary on it. And he's been putting it off for whatever reasons. He's been busy. And finally, the director was like, dude, let's go. And they play the movie. And then in real time, Rupert talks about it. Mm-hmm. And he had a blast. And I think he just did that like last week, if I recall correctly. Mm-hmm. And so the fact that he got this call last night, he's like, I just love that Stigmata is having this weird moment, And so
is there a new Stigmata physical release coming out that goes beyond this very bare bones?
I have that too. This is a podcast.
It's Scream Factory, right? But
it's like it's the best. They save us.
They do. They save movies from obscurity for sure, but they don't always give it the Criterion treatment, that you would want from Stigmata. There aren't enough.
It's weird because sometimes Criterion gives films like Armageddon the Criterion treatment, and then I get confused.
Yeah, there's a reason they do that, and it's called money.
Yeah. They're probably selling more of Armageddons than Women of the Dunes. I appreciate that.
God bless them for selecting the best Michael Bay movies.
100%. By the way, I own that too. And if you haven't, treat yourself to Michael Bay's director commentary in the Criterion edition of Armageddon, where he justifies firing a Gatling gun in space, because what is physics? And he's like, but don't you understand? Toys with guns sell more. Ha! And he says, ha! And you're like, wow, just like Akira Kurosawa. Ha! It's one of my favorite director commentaries ever. Delightful, and I highly endorse it. So Dave, tell us about, for you, did you see this film first in the theater? When did you first come to it? And of all the films you could have picked on this program, how did you get to Stigmata?
Well, it was between Stigmata and H&R Puffin Stuff.
Oh my God, he's your friend. Things get rough.
Kidding.
Has there been a horror movie about H&R Puffin Stuff yet? Because they did Banana Splits.
But if there isn't, there should be. When Todd and I first talked, and I was trying to figure out what this podcast.
What am I doing?
I was trying to think. Well, what? And I remembered seeing Stigmata back in probably '99, or but it was like a distant fog memory.
Okay.
Because I watched a couple of movies, one of them, and I think I told Todd, another one I watched was The Hand, which was
Michael Caine, the early Oliver Stone.
Yeah, that's right. And
Yeah.
and that was another thing don't want to get away from your question, but one thing I do like about, say, see a shitty movie is like seeing Michael Caine embrace something so crappy and make it real. I mean, it blew me away with that performance, acting with a severed hand. But
Well, and also it has one of my favorite director cameos. It's almost like Oliver Stone.
Oh yeah, is the homeless guy there?
Oliver plays the homeless guy and has the hand strangle him on his own film, and you're like, ooh, that's hard.
I just always wondered how the hand got from Vermont to California.
Right?
Going like
I can't even get to Santa Monica with a car, so that's a fair point.
It probably like went up a tree and latched onto a bird.
How did he cross the Mississippi? That's what but anyway, so I picked Stigmata because I was raised a Catholic.
Okay.
And movies about the church, intrigue me. So I was talking to my wife and we were going around and I forget either her or I said, well, remember that movie Stigmata? So we watched it. Yeah. And we both kind of looked and saw that I think it got some pretty bad reviews.
Yeah.
I think it hit with a splash, but then went away fast. But we both watched it and said, this is good. And I thought Byrne was good. I thought Patricia Arquette was really good. Yes. I thought Jonathan Pryce was good. Yeah. And oddly enough, just side note, the guy that plays Father Durning in it, I think is Tom Kopachi. He's an old friend of mine.
Oh.
I knew Tom Kopachi and Ann Cusack. She had a sitcom years ago.
Okay.
That I did a guest spot on that. And so I knew her a little bit. That was kind of a just extra bonus.
I love that.
But we watched it and we liked it. And I mean, it questioned some of my Catholic upbringing, which I've had some serious doubts about. But it did intrigue me, and I thought it was good. Let me say this about one of the only things that do you guys know? I'm sure you do. I didn't see the movies, but I read the books. The Da Vinci Code.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
And do you know a book or a movie called Smilla's Sense of Snow?
Yeah, Julie Armand. Yeah.
Okay, so both of those to me, they're great. They're great. They're going great, and it gets to the last bit. And I go, you chose to Hollywood this out. You chose to make it into a movie, which ruined it for me. And the only thing about Stigmata, which I did really, really like, was at the end with the car chase and he's choking her out and blah, blah, blah. It got a little too for me, but didn't ruin the movie in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
That's a hard thing, actually. One of my favorite examples of that, because across the board, people hate the ending so much that it ruins the entire movie for them. I'm not that guy. You can give me a really bad ending, and if I was entertained up to that ending, even if I don't like it, I'll respect your movie.
Really?
Just hassle with the ending. It's like The Mist is the one I always think of.
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever saw that.
I didn't. But let me just, because it's an interesting thing what you say, and I appreciate that. But to me, it's like, and it's like funny. I'm doing this now, and I'm really glad. But the World Series is going on right now, and as far as the end goes, let me just say this: if you were up 5-4 for 8 innings, and in the bottom of the ninth somebody hits a home run and you lose the game,
right?
That stinks. The end of the movie makes a lot of sense. It means a lot to me. It's like losing it in the ninth inning, or a Kobe 3-pointer.
Sure, that's true. Yeah, that's fair.
And it's funny. I was talking to a friend of mine today, just anecdotally. I'm sorry, but I did a radio play version of On the Waterfront at the School Bowl a number of years ago.
Cool.
And that was a book first, and then a play, and then they made the movie. And I was lucky enough to meet Bud Schulberg and talk to him.
Oh,
and
wow.
When they made the movie, in the book and the play, Terry dies at the end.
Right.
But when they made the movie, they said, you can't do that. He's got to live. And frankly, I didn't know the book or the play. When I saw the movie, it's a great ending.
Yeah.
It's a great ending. And so I guess I would, to your point, Todd, endings of movies, they mean a lot to me.
Yeah.
You know,
they totally matter. Yeah.
Drop the ball, you cross the goal line to me.
Right. And again, also the adaptation of it all. I mean, for me, like, I remember, I think like most people on the planet who saw Jaws, you're like, oh my God, this is one of the best movies ever. And so I saw the film probably at too young an age, and like, oh my God, there's going to be a shark coming out of my swimming pool. Like that was like, and then I read the book after I'd seen the movie like 100 times because, Gen X and video. But the book, again, spoiler alert, it's been out for a while, so bear with me. But like in the book, the shark kind of swims away, and it's this metaphor. It's a lot of things that wouldn't work on film. And so I think the ending that Spielberg kind of came up with, obviously with Carl Gottlieb and all the writers, to have that kind of, pyrotechnic ending, it is more satisfying from a cinema standpoint. Mm-hmm. But there was something really existentially like troubling about what Benchley did, right? The monster that's out there and you can't, get away from. And I think Carpenter with Halloween, right? Loomis shoots Michael, he falls off. That was it. And it wasn't testing well. And then Carpenter in the original Halloween had that idea of like, we have a lot of B-roll where we let camera rolls like in corners of things. And then they, with that great theme stitched together, like he's everywhere, evil's everywhere, and you can't vanquish him. And then all of a sudden you had an ending that worked, but that wasn't the script ending. That was found in that. And I think 7 has a great ending, but I mean, I always talk about like how 7 is a movie. It's a detective movie where the detectives never detect. They never get ahead of him. The bad guy turns himself in. They never catch up to it. But because the ending is so powerful, you forget that. I think Wonder Woman is an example of probably what Todd is saying, which is, I would argue, the first two of the 3 acts of the original Patty Jenkins Wonder Woman are kind of pitch perfect. And that ending feels a little familiar, like okay, now it's lots of weapons and shooting, and it becomes perhaps less interesting. But the first 2 are so good. I think it helps you get over maybe a creaky third act, but so it depends how good that beginning is. But I think you're right. You have to land that ending, and sometimes audiences will forgive you a weak opening or a slow pace if you can nail that ending.
Well, to me,
yeah, that's the M. Night Shyamalan effect.
Correct. Totally great
example. The twist ending that somehow you didn't see in The Sixth Sense, even though I did. The 5 minutes of the start of that movie, the twist ending and the reveal is so awesome that the rest of the movie being kind of slow is okay.
Oh, that's funny. See, no, The Sixth Sense was one of those that my wife and I went to see it in the movies, and I loved it, but I couldn't trust myself, so we watched it again then at home because I said, "Where did they drop the ball? Where did they drop the ball?" And they didn't. I don't think there's a false moment in there. Even when she's in the restaurant talking.
There's a bit with the taking of the bill, the way that
all makes sense. It all makes sense. But
to the credit of M. Night, he does not telegraph everything. It's just it's how you approach the movie. So if I approach,
but it's like when you watch a movie and you say, "Oh, that would never happen," or "Oh, they dropped the ball there," or he didn't. That movie to me, technically, was perfect.
I think you're right on that. I think also part of what's complicated for M. Night, and then we're going to get back on track, is that film was his, like, the gimmick that he did expertly. I'm with Todd. I actually was a young executive working for a producer over at Sony, and I had read it as a spec the day it went out. I loved it, and I tried to run it into Sony for my producer's term deal to try to get. I was like, "This is going to sell. This is great." But I was about 15 pages in. I'm like, "Oh, it's the boy version of Mary Lambert's Siesta. He's dead and doesn't know it." And this is, I was like, cool, because that's one of my favorite movies that is criminally underseen. And I think it also has Gabriel Byrne.
I have it on VHS, which is literally the only way you can watch it.
I have a cut from the director, and
you have a digital cut. Maybe you should leak that on the dark web.
I would never do such a thing to Mary, but I think that film is really interesting. But I also think, like, M. Night is now a prisoner of everyone wants me to do the gimmick movie, and I'm never sure he's gotten out of that. But going back to Stigmata, it's Y2K. There's fear about what's going on, and I think we are also it's an innocent America in that we're still a couple years away from 9/11, and religiosity came back post 9/11 in a lot of ways, and so I think this film is, to Todd's point at the top of the show, is very much of its time stylistically. Rupert talks a little bit about propaganda had this script and they met with him because Rupert he just still does great commercials and videos and everything in addition to his film work. Yeah. And they let the option run out. I'll let him talk about that because we have it in the clip, but the idea that he knew how to put his style of that moment onto this, because he didn't want to copy The Exorcist. He didn't want to, but of course, if you're going to do anything,
I don't think he did, not even a little bit.
It's hard to get away from that because Friedkin's film is so powerful, but I think he did his best to get away from that, and to great results, which is why we're still talking about his film. Why don't we do this? Why don't we run? I asked him the first question, and we'll cut after he answers the first question. We'll come back to the show. Dave will walk us through the plot of the movie, and then for everybody listening, we're going to put Rupert's interview as a side bonus on our page, and it'll be on the audio at the conclusion of the show. So okay. I think Todd has figured out how to do this because he's the master.
I don't know if I have. We'll see.
Let's see what happens. Yeah.
All right, we are live. 4, 3,
share screen.
1. Hello, we are live from LAX, or at least Rupert
share
is
screen.
Of our film tonight. Rupert, thank you
for
literally being in LAX on your way to somewhere fabulous, I am sure, to talk about your 1999 film Stigmata.
It's a great joy to be talking to you again, Tracy.
Right back at you. Again, you are a great guy.
You guys are seeing this, right? You don't see it. You just hear it?
Yep.
Yes.
God damn it.
And our guest tonight loves your movie and picked it. So we're going to do kind of a deep dive. But while I have you, I just wanted you to talk to us a little bit about how did this film come about? How did you get this set up? How did MGM make it?
There he is.
Actually, it was very simple. I was actually pitching.
Oh, you had it. Go back. There you go.
To the guys at Propaganda, Steve Golan and Jan.
Wait, you were seeing it?
Yes.
Okay.
Really good. So they gave me Stigmata. I'm like, this is great. What are you doing with this? And they're like, oh, we don't know what to do with it. And Steve goes, it's a horror movie. And Yanni goes, no, it's a spiritual journey. I'm like, yeah, but it's both. And I just watched them play verbal ping pong for 5 minutes. I'm like, no. And anyway, so it fell out of auction. So I just kept on tracking it. I was persistent. Frank Price had it for a year.
Okay.
And every time it fell out of auction, I didn't even have a shopping deal or anything, but I just knew when it was available.
Yeah.
And I met with, I had a general meeting with Frank Mancuso Jr.
Yes.
I had 2 or 3 things lined up that I thought would be absolutely perfect for him. All this stuff. And anyway, so I go, what about this? He goes, yeah, no. What about this? Yeah, no. I said, well, I got this thing called Stigmata. It's about, this atheist hairdresser in Boston who received the wounds of Christ. He goes, I'll make it.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
So, of course, he might be Roman Catholic or not, but obviously comes from Italian heritage and culture.
Right.
And his dad was running the studio. Helpful hint.
Yes.
Always good to
yes.
do that.
Good to have that.
Yeah, and so they really jumped at it, and there hadn't really been a lot of. We've been swamped with movies since of Roman Catholic blah blah blah, but this was before Dan Brown. This was before all the Exorcist reboots, and it had been a while, since there had been.
You're building up to Y2K, right? It was kind of the end of the century. We had films in the cycle ended.
Yeah.
Schwarzenegger also.
Yeah.
Okay, now
really sort of factor into our things so much, but yeah, it was in the zeitgeist. Yeah.
Okay, and how did you come to cast the amazing and future Oscar winner Patricia Arquette?
Well, I had the great luck to work with Patricia already on a TV movie that we did with Mark Harmon for Warner's and ABC called Dillinger. And she actually played the last girlfriend for Lady in Red, the one who died, who's with him at the biograph when he gets shot down. Yeah. And she was amazing, It didn't take a genius. We realized, and I just tracked her and whatever, and you know, the way things always go at studios is like we got to cast a guy first.
Right.
Like, but she's the lead, right? Yeah, but we still got to cast a guy. That's just the way it is. I'm like, all right, okay.
Yeah.
And so we offered it to a couple of guys, and people were like a little nervous of it, you know.
Because of the religious content, you think?
Just everything, you know. They just, you know, I met with whatever. I met with a couple of people, and they're like, it's really interesting, but I don't know. Anyway, then Frank, who's a very smart guy, goes, okay, I don't want to get another pass on this. Who do you want for the girl? Let's go to her now.
Great.
And I'm like, well, Patricia. And he goes, great. You know her? I said, yeah, I've worked with her. Great, let's just go to her. And very quickly, she signed on. So we were like, awesome. And again, it was this whole process. Like the script had started off as one thing. And the ending of the script had been much more conventionally horror. Like, you know, Cardinal turns into snake and, you know, blah, blah, blah. That kind of, you know, fun stuff, you know, Hellboyish kind of vibe. And we all felt that that wasn't really what the movie, it wasn't really the premise that the movie had
Well,
sort of offered, you know.
Like, yeah.
It felt like a different thing. But it was hard to know what it would be. And so one of the things that I started digging up was, you know, like in every horror movie ever made, somebody speaks Aramaic. And someone goes, it's the language of Jesus.
Right,
you know? And I'm like, all right. But you can't just say, you know, the last words of him on the cross or whatever. So I started researching the Gospels. And I came across this whole series of Gospels, which are known collectively as the Gnostic Gospels.
Yes, the Gnostic Gospels, of course.
Yeah, and one of them in particular is called the Gospel of St. Thomas. And this is a sayings gospel. So it's about 120, like, you know, pithy little sayings by Jesus, you know. And it had been discovered in a rather strange way. It was discovered in 1945 in Nag Hammadi in Egypt. A couple of guys were looking for kindling. They found this stuff that had writing all over it, so they thought this would be great for starting a fire.
Yeah.
They started making a fire, and then their dad came along and goes, might be more valuable than kindling. Why don't we see if we can sell these to some idiots?
Right.
And they did, and it got stuck at the Jung Institute for about 30 years.
So
really like
I'm gonna end it there.
it's a teaser. We'll listen to the rest of it because he talks about the hardest scene to shoot, which is the subway scene, how it was received in its time, why he thinks it's a cult classic and people keep coming back to it. So there's
I'll put the full interview video up on my favorite shitty movie page tomorrow. I'll also add the audio of it to the end of our podcast version.
So again, thank you to Rupert for indulging us and joining this. We can't wait to have him on the show. But Dave, to your point, I love that you said the ending was a thing because Rupert talks very specifically about what it was and how they tried to kind of conform it to her journey. But I agree with you watching it again. There's a moment where it turns into like the point of view from Gabriel Byrne's priest character, and we have a high-speed chase, which I think you're talking to. But before we jump ahead, let's go ahead and just in case people haven't seen it for a minute, talk us through the basic, kind of plot of the movie, right? Like we open up much like The Exorcist in a foreign land. Tell us about
there's an old priest who has passed away, and he had stigmata, and he has this rosary, and at the funeral, there's a Madonna that's crying tears of blood, and anyway, someone takes the rosary, and I guess it's Patricia Arquette's mom then sends it to Patricia. That's the conduit that
right. So we have like this concept of a priest who we find is dead.
Yeah.
The statue is bleeding human blood. We find out later. A young boy takes the rosary of the dead priest, right? And then you've got this great title sequence that tells you it's 1999, where the mom, to your point, sends her daughter the rosary.
The rosary, and then that rosary changes her life because that's when everything starts happening to her, and so then she's got the wrist and the nails in the wrist and this and that. They go to check it out and they say, well, this can't be you because you're an atheist, blah blah blah, and but the priest Byrne you see something a little more than that, and stays on it and follows it to the end.
I think it's important to note here that since I saw Stigmata in
Yeah.
1999 in the theaters, I have refused any rosaries that were offered
It's a
to me.
bad idea. The thing.
Don't give me that rosary. Keep
Uh,
it. I don't want it.
But one of the things that I think is really interesting, and Rupert goes into more detail in our bonus feature here, the hook that got this screen lit by Frank Mancuso, who also, to Todd's much joy, was the young son of the head of a studio who said, I think Friday the 13th is a good idea, and made it happen. So he's that guy who understands genre very smartly. But I think what he thought was the hook was, wait a second. To Rupert's point that we heard, it's been a while since we've had kind of an exorcist, Catholic thriller horror film. But there's something.
But let me, if I could just say one thing about that.
Yeah.
Okay. First of all, and I'm probably by myself alone. I don't see this as a quote unquote horror movie.
Fair.
I don't. And as far as The Exorcist goes, that's pretty cut and dry. That's possession of this little girl. What happens with Arquette in this movie is she's got both things going in her at the same time, because they even say in the movie, the closer you get to, if you do Stigmata, the closer you get to God, Jesus, whatever, it opens a venue or an avenue for the negative to come in. So it's not it's more complex than The Exorcist.
Yes.
That's all.
And the hook was, which is what sold Frank, who knows how to market, was the idea that Stigmata, if in Dogma, is usually like Francis of Assisi, I think was the first stigmatic. And then it goes on. Yes. Right? So you've got women and men throughout history allegedly who this has happened to. But what the hook was for Frank from a studio perspective was, wait a second, we have a party girl, hot, hairdresser set in Boston, even though we have downtown locations in Los Angeles, the Eastern Building being prominent where she lives and works. And the idea that an atheist is gifted, the gift is a curse, with the trauma of the signs of Christ was like, wait, what is going on there? And so it was a great setup because she's the least likely in Dogma, right? You have an atheist, and there's even a scene where Gabriel Byrne is the priest. Well, this can't be that because you're not. Right. So
It's a little bit like because the whole thing with Arquette and that it's happenstance. It's like, I don't know if you read a movie called I read a book called I think it's called House of Sand and Fog.
Yeah, Jennifer Connelly.
Okay. Well, all of that stuff happens because of some little accident on Topanga Canyon. Without that little glitch, nothing happens.
Right.
And so Arquette, being an atheist and all that, that's fine. That's all cool. It's the incredible happenstance of her getting the rosary from that priest that died. So the atheism and all that stuff doesn't really matter. It went beyond that. You know what I mean?
Well, it's interesting because it also is something where there's a sacred object that transmutes something. Whereas
which people took issue with, but
right. But that's a Hollywood thing that's interesting to think about.
Yeah.
But what I love about this, and there's a little moment I have a still from because it just cracks me up. Again, going back to Gabriel Byrne being, for a lot of us, hot priest. Rupert does this thing, and to me it's old Hollywood. They used to do it all the time in Cary Grant movies or whatever, where the hot leading man walks by and there's a bunch of women that make comments, right? But here you have it like he's in Rome and you've got the women of the night saying, hey father, and then he of course does the thing.
No, they didn't say hey father. They didn't know he was a priest.
Well, but he does the thing where he shows that he's
shows them the collar and they go, oh wow, okay, because they just thought he was a good-looking guy.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
And they told him they'd give him a Vatican discount.
But there's that little kind of grace note in that scene. It's like, I don't need prostitutes to tell me he's hot, but it's that old school introducing of the leading man that again we don't do a lot.
Are prostitutes the people you look to for.
No, I
someone
don't, but
who's
I
not. I mean,
You know what?
I would imagine a good prostitute is not looking
here's what I
for
would
someone
say.
who's hot.
I think
But
those two-
here's
in all
my point
fairness,
though. I was gonna say, like, just to cross the T though, like if you watch One Fine Day, which was George Clooney after ER trying to find leading man status or whatever with Michelle Pfeiffer, who better in a romantic comedy. But like there are 5 scenes in the beginning where George Clooney walks into an office, he gets copied as whatever, and every woman is Googling and ooh la la, and you're like, we get it. He's, but like that's an old Hollywood thing that we don't do anymore. But in 1999, there's still that grace note that's very old school, which I kind of just wanted to, I thought it was an interesting note.
Well, look, I may be putting too much into it, but I think, and it's very subtle. Some people get it, some people won't. But I think what that's supposed to be is here's this guy walking, and he's got these hookers, and to me it showed I've made a vow. I'm not. No,
Yeah.
don't even. I'm. And it sets this plants a seed for later when Arquette comes on to him and he goes, no, I've made a vow. It's subtle, but I think it shows. No, I'm a man of integrity, a priest of integrity, and don't tempt me. I'm not interested.
But it's nice.
It's not just. In other words, it's not just a throwaway. It's
not throwaway at all. No. But
it's definitely good character development, but
exactly.
it's also
it's an old school device that is smartly used, to your point, Dave, to set up later. Because of course, if Patricia Arquette's in a movie, I'm sorry, like something, there's going to be sexual tension. Like there's no version of these two.
I just want to say on the shitty movie level that this sequence is very funny.
Yes,
because of how hard it's trying to do all the things we're saying that it's doing.
Correct.
And that's why it's delightful.
And I also love this moment. And Dave, I was wondering what you thought, because again, as you were saying, growing up Catholic, when you asked Jonathan Pryce, as I think a cardinal, and he's like, what's going on with this, like, X-ray picture? And we hear that the blood, it's because the blood was warm, because it was actually blood. Like, it's this weird thing where literally Jonathan Pryce is like, dude, Gabriel Byrne, you work for me. I'm looking for you to find miracles, but I'm trying to shut you down. And then he sees something, and with this specific case, and there's something about Jonathan Pryce going, I don't like that you're investigating this. And that starts us with a narrative of like, what are you hiding, Jonathan? The church, right? And that's how we get into the narrative of the larger, what is this about? Which is interesting.
Right. Well, to that point, when I was in high school, they had in my St. Rock's, my Catholic church, I forget what it was called, but it was every Monday night or something, there was a meeting of people. And this happened not only there, but in catechism and whatnot. I was a question asker. And I can't tell you how many times I was told, be quiet, don't ask. And so the thing with Jonathan Pryce was, look, he was towing the line. It was, don't ask. It's not your business. It's faith. And and I ran into that as a young guy many times. And eventually I had to, I still search for answers a lot. You have no idea. But my Catholicism, formality of Catholicism, I had to abandon, because it's like Price. It's like, don't ask, don't question.
Yeah.
Because you might find out the truth.
Well, but
I think the biggest question that's asked in Sunday school and CCD, the more casual Catholics, is but wait, what is it's Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost? What is the Holy Ghost? Your answer is always, that is faith.
Yeah.
But why? And then you ask questions like, well, why did Jesus have to sacrifice himself for everybody else's sins? And like, how does that actually play out as far as it benefiting me, which you're telling me it does? How does it play out? Like, how is it working for me? It's not it. And faith, it's about faith. And that's the whole thing.
It's also, that's secular. That's the humanism, secularism versus religious dogma, which is like, some people might say the unexamined life is not worth living. And part of the point of, I think, this film that I think is actually pretty ballsy considering everyone's so triggered nowadays. But in 1999, you could still ask the question, or at least posit a thematic narrative that suggests that there perhaps is a gospel that Christ wrote himself.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And that they have
ask you.
to shut it down, because if you ask too many questions, it might upset the church.
Look, I think I was going to ask you if when you talked to Rupert,
Yeah.
and I was when he mentioned the Gnostic Gospels.
Yes.
It's funny. I read that book years ago, and I was talking about. I just found it. I still have it, and I'm going to reread it. But because the Gnostic Gospels are a lot of writings by I know at least Thomas, but Mary Magdalene.
Yes.
And there's others.
Yes.
And the church quashed them.
Buried them. Yeah.
Don't read that shit, because that's going to, tip the apple cart. And that's part of what bothered me. It's, here's what we want you to know.
Yeah.
And don't ask questions. Right. Don't dig any deeper. This is the deal.
Right. Well,
I was interested. I mean,
he talked
about that Rupert mentioned the Gnostic Gospel.
He does talk about it because it was part of his research and what he wanted to say with this. Jeff Luce, for those of us listening and can't read the screen, he said, did Stigmata get protested like Dogma? They came out within a few weeks of each other. Ironically, they did not. This was seen as more of a safe studio movie with really posh budget. It wasn't affiliated. You didn't have a
They were both used in sort of Christian think pieces about Hollywood being negative about Christianity, because like all movies were negative about the church, which I think is fair because the church is fucked.
Well, and this is an editorial brought to you by My Favorite Shitty Movie. But to what Jeff is saying, though, different than Dogma, but for a different reason, because you had Kevin Smith and that was a different kind of thing with what he was saying. But I think, Dave, to your question in terms of the Gnostic Gospels, part of what, and this is like, God, what was it? The Last Templar was a great book that also talked a little bit about St. Thomas, which is where a lot of Christ's quotes came from. Again, this is not a show about like religion, but
no, I know.
But I feel like, without trampling on anyone's beliefs, the reality of the New Testament, right? Gospel according to Mark is written first, 63 AD. No one was alive who was writing that. When the church assembled the New Testament as we know it, they picked and choose, which is why I think Matthew is Sermon of the Mount, but it's not in John. Why, if it's so important, right? That's why the four Gospels have a little bit of a different thing. It doesn't negate them, but what is interesting, and I think, Dave, what you're asking and what Rupert found interesting as a filmmaker, which is imbuing this very commercial mainstream thriller from 1999, is the idea that the message of Christ is great, but who are the guardians telling you which part to read, and is there really a gospel that Christ himself wrote that we're hiding because Correct. It might change your point of view? Well, that is kind of the underbelly of this movie, that is ostensibly about a woman who has no faith having the signs of Christ. And right. What does that mean in 1999 Boston, shot in downtown Los Angeles? Right. That's cool. That's a great concept.
But it's like, do you remember when you were a kid, you played the game telephone or whatever it is?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Somebody starts, they tell it goes around and around and around. And by the time it gets to the last person, it's,
right.
And that's how the stories from Christ came down.
Correct.
They're all over the place.
Yeah.
The words of Christ himself are what the Gnostic Gospels talk about. And right. Those were what were to a large degree kept under wraps.
Right.
For selfish reasons.
I agree. And again, I'm so not a religious scholar, but one of the things just from a story standpoint that I find interesting that I think Rupert's film also kind of touches on, I think, Dave, you mentioned like Mary Magdalene, for example.
Yeah.
I think, don't quote me on this, Jeff could probably Google it faster. I feel like it's Pope Innocent the 12th, but I might be off on the numbers. He gave a sermon before we had the printing press and Gutenberg, like let people read, where he missed a chapter and he conflated somebody who was quote unquote the whore with Magdalene, who actually was not. It's a classic misread that's been repeated through the age. She was probably Christ's closest disciple, but that's a different thing. But the way that the Catholics, again, Madonna whore, right? There's a duality with women, at least the way that's shown in that faith. But I think what's interesting about that, with all that being true, again, you have a very blonde, very atheist lead character.
Mhm.
Suddenly, whether she believes or not is irrelevant. She's got the thorns of Christ. Her feet are being destroyed. Her, wrists are doing. So what's happening to this woman? And I think what's also interesting that I just want to point out as this token chick here is that nobody believes her. Right? Oh, you're a party girl. You're having sex. You're doing drugs. You're doing shots. And she's like, guys, I didn't do this to myself. And no one believes this woman, right down to the female doctor. So there's a little bit of like, and so I think it's a really smart way in to this story with a female protagonist driving the action.
Well, I keep going back to what I said. I called it happenstance, but if you remember in Twelfth Night, Malvolio has a great line where he says, some are born great, some achieve greatness, and some have greatness thrust upon them. Well, she had greatness, I don't know, but thrust upon her.
Yeah.
And that's why it works.
Yes.
It wasn't her choice.
And as an audience member, whatever your faith is, you can relate to Patricia Arquette as the center of that story. Rupert talks a lot about this in the extras. So for more details from the director's mouth himself, definitely listen to that. But what's interesting is that we'll just run through this really quickly. Like, no one believes her. Gabriel Byrne starts to believe her, talks to this guy who reads Aramaic and is like, yes, there's this gospel according to Christ, St. Thomas, blah, blah, blah. We figure that out. We go really quickly and we see Frankie Page's world. Like, she's a hairdresser. Hey, look, it's Ellen's wife, right? Portia de Rossi in an early as a child. And then she starts to, because if there is something mystical going on, she has visions. And what I want to point out, one of the things I think Rupert does really well as a director in this is the use of the color red throughout this film. Right? This is
absolutely.
I didn't ask him, and I should have. Were you inspired by Don't Look Now? But when I see red and a woman like this, there's something very interesting about this. But no one believes Patricia, and her friend, the great Nia Long, is like, girl, what's going on? This is the subway sequence that Rupert said was really hard to shoot. They shot it practically. It's not green screen. There's lots of interesting stuff going on. But you see that she's struck again. And I think the action scenes in this and the way he photographs this, she gets whipped just like Christ.
Yeah.
And this is the part where you go through kind of the exorcist. Let's like examine her. What's really going on with her? She's got the best friend. Again, Nia Long, love to see her. And then all of a sudden, Gabriel Byrne comes a calling because he's actually doing his job, regardless of what Jonathan Pryce wants him to do. And he's the hot priest. She gives him a haircut. They flirt. There's tension. They go to a diner, and you start to see there's something very odd about her wounds. It's not self-inflicted. This is the stigmata. And so Gabriel seems to know what's going on, doesn't listen to the church. Right. And then, and we have our girl who loves a lot of candles. I'm saying this girl loves a lot of candles in her life. But she very much is trying to read and understand as an outsider. And I think that makes her both vulnerable and interesting and relatable as a protagonist, because none of us know that dogma specifically, but she's trying to seek it out because Western medicine and her atheistic mind can't explain what is befalling of her.
That I couldn't agree more. I mean,
and then she has outbursts, right? She keeps getting these terrible attacks.
No, she doesn't understand it at all. That's true.
At a certain point, this movie does just become her getting stigmata and then having conversations with Gabriel Byrne. So I think there's a little pacing problem with the second act on that level.
And also, did anyone else get nervous when she's at the top of the Eastern building where she's been spazzing out and I was like, is she going to fall off this building? Like, I don't like heights. And this, for some reason, the sequence kind of like,
I don't like heights either.
The way he shot this was so cool. I just thought
it was cool but I literally went, I looked at my watch and I said, it's too early. She can't die now.
Yeah.
So I thought it was a cool thing, but I didn't think I didn't think she was going to jump or anything like that.
So what about writing in Aramaic, to your point, Dave? Like, this is a pretty great scene.
Oh, it's a great scene. It's kind of like, what was that, Matt Damon in Good Will Hunting?
Beautiful Mind.
It was fantastic that she's writing I thought it was a great scene. And the priest sees it, and it's like, oh my God, he's taking photographs of it, and
yeah,
no, it's fantastic.
It's a great sequence. And then I also, again, she's the only one who gets to wear red. There's the baby, and then there's Patricia. But I think it's a very interesting thing. And then you start to see the dove, and you start to see the duality of the positive and the negative.
They also juxtaposed blood with red wine a lot.
Yes.
Which was kind of cool. You know, he's pouring a glass of wine, and then it shows the blood going through the tubes.
Well, I mean, that's what it's supposed to be in the Catholic Mass. You have the whole, what do they call it? Something cataclysm. I don't know, whatever it is. Yeah. When you combine the water and the wine, it's the blood of Jesus, and then you drink it as an entire church together. You share the same cup.
Jeff Luce, as always, points out something very interesting. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. borrowed Rupert's scene when Colton was compelled to write in the Cree language. It is from like this. Good eyes.
Oh,
Jen.
really? Wow, that's
well done. So there you go, Rupert. You're being quoted. But even when she falls back into flowers, it's always in this like prostate Christ-like tradition. Like last week we did Omega Man, where we end with Charlton Heston, Moses himself, crucified at the end of Omega Man, right? I guess we're being very religious in October. Who knew?
I have a clip of Gabriel Byrne and Patricia Arquette talking about her stigmata.
Please show us.
Here you go.
A priest?
All stigmatics suffer the most intense spiritual conflict. The nearer they are to God, the more open they are to temptation, to evil visions, to the torment of their demons. There's also a smell that accompanies the wounds, the odor of sanctity, the smell of
flowers.
Yes. Flowers.
Well, what happened to him?
He, lived to an old age.
How many wounds did he receive?
2.
I'm dying, aren't I? This thing is killing me.
Yay, Hillary.
That's exactly how it went. That's exactly.
Very nice scene with you.
You're right. That priest is very sexy. That's
right?
Thank you, Dave.
Father Todd. Yeah. Oh my God, Todd, your best performance and Duvernay. Thank you very much.
Thank
you.
You.
Beautiful. No, you guys both killing it. Just saying. But so we'll wrap this up. So obviously Patricia's got a problem. She's possessed. One of my favorite notes, and I did call. We talk about this in the behind the scenes stuff with Rupert. I'm like, so you're doing this movie back in 1999. For MGM, which was MGM UA. And because you're shooting in downtown LA, but you're doubling it for Boston, there's a shot that he used.
It's Boston or it's Pittsburgh?
It's Boston. But like,
Boston?
He said, but like
it's supposed to be Boston, but that's not.
But this is downtown.
Okay, all right.
But my point is, what's beautiful about this scene is that United Artists that is funding his movie, he puts them dead center because
I saw that. That was too funny.
I will say this about this movie, which is funny about it. I am from Massachusetts, and at no point watching this movie did I ever feel like I was watching something shot in Massachusetts.
Well, it's also funny because as somebody who loves, LA and is on the Conservancy board and all that kind of stuff, like there's these great lights that are only like in LA, like Wilshire Boulevard that are featured here. But I just think it's great. But what I appreciate about this is like, again, it's highly stylized. It's very well directed. You've got Gabriel Byrne calling his old buddy, like, can you help me with this Aramaic? And then you start to get the clues. Like here's the creepy priest that
yeah.
dies in the credit. We know that Jonathan Pryce is like, I think Gabriel Byrne's still investigating. We got this guy who we love also in Armageddon, what else.
Yeah, that was a great role, that guy right there.
Fabulous actor.
Is that the guy who fucking pisses off John Wick? Isn't that the guy?
Oh, I don't
Yeah.
know.
And he's the
That's
guy
the
who
John
rents
Wick guy.
he rents Tom Cruise the
Yeah.
Eyes Wide Shut, and he's Lily Sobieski's whatever.
He's not the same actor as the most interesting man in the world from the.
No, that's not him. I don't think.
It's a different guy, but they remind me of each other.
So we quickly ramp up tension because Patricia, basically it's a ticking clock. If she goes through the stigmata, she is dying. And you've got the sexual tension, of course. Then you've got her like with a knife. And then you've got, your exorcist moment where she's floating, gorgeously done. One of my favorite moments in this movie is that you have the priests that have just, hopped over to downtown LA by way of Boston. And they show up to Patricia, Arquette's building with, they should have no idea where she lives. And just like Lenny and Squiggy from Laverne and Shirley, they just bust into her apartment. They don't even knock.
Oh, yeah.
They just are like, they're there, you're like, hello. And you're like, where's Laverne and Shirley? Pepsi and milk for everybody. So all that's happening. And then we get to the point where they're like, let's bring her back to the archdiocese. What I want to say as a woman watching this movie, I'm like, okay, no one believes her and she's right about everything. No one ever, after the first initial thing, no one takes her to the hospital. Like, let's take her to the church. I'm like, get her to a doctor. Never They take her because no, the nuns will totally take care of her. I'm like, are you?
Yeah, that's who you take people to. Nuns.
Yeah, I was like, go to a hospital, girl. But then you've got the secret moment. And this is the part, Dave, that you're talking about, where it's like, look, man, there's probably a gospel that Jesus wrote and the church is hiding it because dogma is dogma, but what he said is a thing. And then all of a sudden Gabriel Byrne gets in to a car and he has to go back to save Patricia Arquette because she's in the clutches of these dudes who want to do an exorcist thing and choke her out. And then Gabriel Byrne, which is, I love the priest who's attacking the cardinal. I'm like, I'm sure that would happen.
Yeah.
So great. And then we get this great moment of 1990s flames, fire. Is it real? Is it not? Well, he walked through for her. He of course saves her because he's hot priest. They still have sexual tension. In case you didn't get it, we have the statue behind her mirroring what's going on with her. And then we have this coda to the film where Gabriel finds the actual honest to God testament of Jesus Christ. And it actually echoes the imagery that Patricia draws on her loft in downtown LA, Boston. And you're like, it's great.
The only thing I wondered about that is he goes back to, is that the original church that he goes back to?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Because all I'm saying, here's this
but the tile doesn't match.
And
so
he just kind of picks it up and why wasn't that found before? I wondered that. I did. I said, wait a minute. It's not like it was buried in some cave somewhere.
No.
Right there in the tile that you lift up with a knife.
And that tile doesn't seem, there is a story where they hide it in the 40s. And there's a quote to the film to say that we found it and we hid it in the 40s to get it out of the way. But it's a little questionable. We don't know.
The Catholic Church loves to hide stuff in plain sight.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. So, okay. So we will wrap it up.
That was the thing, just to make clear about the end of the movie that bothered me. In the time it took Gabriel Byrne to, all the cuts to him driving, Jonathan Pryce would have killed her. She would have been dead for 20 minutes before
it's the longest strangulation.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Well, he's not doing it right. He's just cupping his hands around it. That's not how you do it. You have to. Yeah. Never mind. I'm not going to tell people how to properly strangle.
He was absent the day they taught that in seminary. It's fine.
That must have been it. Yeah. How to strangle the stigmata victim.
But it's movie. That's true, though, just in general. One of the things I love about movies and their shittiness, no matter how good they are, is strangulations are always stupid looking.
Oh, yeah. No, they are.
As is CPR. I don't want to make this just about murder. It's also about life saving. But CPR in the movies always looks stupid. It's like, you can't save someone like that. You have to, it has to be, that's why you can't do it, because you have to break ribs to make it happen.
Totally. So Dave, wrap up for us, revisiting it today. having remembered it again, it piqued your mind. You love this movie, so we're talking about it. Like, what did you think again watching it today through 2024 eyes? And then Todd, same question to you after Dave.
Well, okay, so watching it today, I'm watching it. It's going on. I looked at my wife and I said, this is better than I remember it. I think it's a really, really good movie. I think it holds together. I think, arc-wise, it's right on the money. It makes sense. You got to give it a little bit of artistic,
Yeah.
but it made real sense to me, and I thought it was I think it's a really, really good movie.
Yeah.
I had a little problem with the end, but other than that, I thought it was really good.
All right. Well, check out he goes into more detail about the end and see if maybe that would have worked better for you.
Okay.
I don't know that I disagree with you. I know what you mean when you say it got a little Hollywood. The thing is, but again, what I love about this movie, it was that he had a really proper budget and it did 3 times the budget. So God bless.
That's great. That's
jealous.
Yeah. Was there a straight to video Stigmata too? I bet there was.
If not, there should have been. Todd, what did you think coming back to it?
It's fun. I mean, obviously I own it on Blu-ray, so it stuck with me, enough to have like a proper physical media, because it wasn't available properly on DVD or anything for a long time. So here's this proper thing, and it's a really good Scream Factory Blu-ray. It looks great. And I'm a huge Patricia Arquette fan, so there's you can't keep me away from the Patricia Arquette stuff. And I'm Catholic, so I'm usually hesitant about Catholic themed movies, because usually I go, that's not. I mean, The Exorcist didn't work for me because I was raised too Catholic for that to be frightening to me. And also, like, all the questions that I had in Sunday school, I brought to The Exorcist. So there was too much intellectual bullshit happening for me to get out of my own way and enjoy it as just a horror movie. Stigmata, I really do. Like, to Dave's point, I love the straddle of genres. I mean, it's supernatural. So if you're making not to disagree with you, Dave, but to make the argument that it's a horror movie is totally fair. But also to make the argument that it's more a thriller than a horror movie is also totally fair. So I love movies that straddle genres, and tonally mix you up, and I think this one really does. And it's Omen-esque, in its flavor. And I was saying before the show, Tracy, that watching it again, it reminded me of 2 movies that came out earlier this year, Immaculate and The First Omen, which are basically the same movie. One has intellectual property stuff and one doesn't. But they're saying the same things, and the conspiracy is the same as Stigmata. So it's just interesting. This is 25 years later. We're still throwing that one out there as movies, like as a kind of a thesis statement for a movie, is the Catholic Church is corrupt. Why do we have to keep saying that? I don't know.
Well, I guess the same reason we have Al Smith dinners normalizing Donald Trump.
I got a lot of that. Yeah.
Well, I'm trying to think of the word I want, because, like Todd, you just said horror, thriller, but somehow this movie is beyond those two.
Yeah,
it's psychological examination.
You're right.
It's horror or thriller. There's too much underneath that, which is what appealed to me these 2 times lately that I watched it. I went, wow, no, there's a lot here. It makes you question your, if you are a Catholic, makes you question your Catholicism, your maybe even Christianity. The priesthood and what that's all about. There's so many things that it makes you go, wait a minute, and that's a great thing about the movie. It's not fluff. to me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I think that's a really great point, and that's one
I
of the
think
things I like about the movie.
It's the
Yeah, for
perfect
sure.
summary. I mean, and again, I just miss like middle class budgeted films that have interesting characters and dare to ask questions, but ultimately you're here to have fun. This is a great Friday night movie. Enjoy it, and I wish you were still making more of these. This is the thing that again, why we like the show. We want to lift these films, which I mean, it's crazy to me to think this is 25 years ago now.
Yeah.
I know, it's insane.
But
insane.
it's a really good one, and I also think whatever. First of all, and Rupert made this joke too, but I love that one of the screenwriters of this story was last name is Lazarus. I feel like there's something very cool about allowing Patricia Arquette to have this kind of a leading role, because I think I'm with Todd. I don't think
she was great.
She's always amazing. I think this is a very hard thing to play. I think because in somebody else's hands, you might judge her, you might not like her, you may not understand her. I think she has to be like in denial. She's asked to do things from the script standpoint that may not be organically how a lot of us would act, but she never has a false note. Her performance carries this, and I think in Rupert's hands, the stylistic flourishes of this. It's a really fun movie that I would like us to get back to again, and I think the studios would be well served to get back to this kind of smart budget, giving people interesting roles and just throwing out questions. And I think it is important. I think, Dave, you mentioned this. Rupert brought it up today. Like, this is pre-Dan Brown, making it fashionable again. And so this was like the percolation of, we're going on a new century, and what do we have to say about kind of ancient thoughts and myths? And that's kind of great if you anchor it in a good genre film. So it's a special film. If y'all haven't seen it, we are officially endorsing. Please check it out. And thanks for
watch it. I'm also, I looked it up to be sure. There's no straight to video Stigmata 2.
Okay.
I feel like that is a huge waste.
It is
a huge waste. Some other younger actress who wasn't famous could have been Stigmata 2. That's all I'm saying.
That's right.
I think that's a very fair point. It's a fair point. Should we go to the next?
Let's do one of our segments. Let's do our classic Be Bad or Be Best. This is where Tracy and I, Dave, present titles to you of movies, and you tell us if they're so bad nobody should see them. That's a Be Bad. Or they're so bad it's the greatest thing I've ever seen. That would be a Be Best. If you haven't seen the movie, it's okay. You can judge just the poster art. Tracy, you want to go? You want to go first?
I will. Keeping with the theme of female protagonists who might take a little bit too long to figure out what's going on with them with a religious overtone. This is one of my favorite movies from the era. Demi Moore in The Seventh Sign. Abby, would you die for him? And like an hour and a half in, she's like, I think that might be a Jesus thing. And you're like, yeah, girl. But it's young Demi Moore. She's coming off of About Last Night, and she's before G.I. Jane. And it's this really cool, I think also very well directed, super fun, ask questions of faith. The guff, is it full, is it empty? It's like Jürgen Prochnow, fresh from his triumph in Das Boot, is the priest in that film, also kind of hot. And asking these questions with Demi Moore in her full brat pack glory, trying to answer them, I think is really well directed. I think it's kind of a maybe forgotten film, but if you like Stigmata, I almost feel like if I were running the New Beverly, I would do Stigmata and The Seventh Sign. And I think if you like Demi Moore and Patricia, Arquette, which you should because they're both amazing, that's kind of an interesting parallel. So I think for me, it's a Be Best, but I'm curious what y'all think. If you saw it then, if you've seen it since, and what your thoughts are.
Well, first of all, I try never to use the word y'all.
I know. I'm trying.
No, it's okay. I saw The Fifth Sign a long time ago. I don't know that movie, but I am a fan of Demi Moore.
Yep.
And you're saying Patricia Arquette is in this as well?
No, I'm just saying there are kind of parallel storylines. Female protagonists.
And I think it was Demi Moore did a Carl Hyacin movie. Do you know Carl Hyacin?
Striptease.
Yeah, was she in that? Okay.
Yeah, she's the lead. Yeah, $12 million back in the day. Yeah.
Demi Moore, I think, is terrific. So based on that alone, I'd watch the movie. So what is that? Is it the best?
Be best.
That's the best.
That's
Yeah.
because I never saw it, but I like her an awful lot.
After seeing Stigmata, it's a great double feature.
Okay, good deal.
All
I'm
right.
with you then.
All right.
Yeah,
all right.
you wouldn't hate
Trust
Seven
you.
Sign. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's got
Father
stuff.
Todd. What do you think?
Oh, Seven Sign is a B best for me for sure.
All right.
Yeah, it's a good B picture. I mean, that's sort of what we celebrate in these things is these mid-budget movies, and the Seven Sign is totally fun. Maybe it's, the ending could give you trouble, Dave, when you finally see it.
Okay.
The third act of the Seventh Sign is a bit muted. That's my problem with the movie, but it's entertaining throughout.
And Demi's great.
Yeah, Demi's great as she always is.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, she was her best, of course, in One Crazy Summer, but we all know that.
Bunnies, cute and fuzzy bunnies.
We all know that. All right, I'll do mine.
All right.
This is another, Christian mythology movie. It's actiony in a way. It's called Legion. It's got Paul Bettany as an angel who's fighting to save the occupants of a diner, a desert highway diner, from an onslaught of demons. Dave, is it be bad or be best?
Well, I would say, and I don't want to come off as a misogynist or chauvinist or anything like that, but for the ladies, anybody that's got abs like that, I mean, you want to watch it. I mean, it's great for them, It's, I never saw that movie. I immediately thought of Legionnaire's Disease, which was not a good thing. But no, I'm telling you, those abs.
Yeah.
You got to give it a shot. You know what I would say? Like my wife, give it the 10-minute sting test.
All right.
All right. That's fair. So that's a B best for our purposes.
Yeah, be best. For all intents and purposes, it's a B best.
I saw this in the theater.
Me too.
I felt like the movie makes no sense. I think that Paul Bettany, I used to like him a little more than I do now after some current events. But that aside,
is there like Paul Bettany?
No, it's just personal drama of attaching
himself personal
and dropping out
behind the scenes
during a production. But aside from that, but regardless of that, I think he's quite good in a film that's not. And I think that had this film been a little better, that Legion should have been almost like The Prophecy, it had a bunch of sequels. Like Legion should have been the setup for that. And I just think the film didn't quite come together, but I think he's quite good in this role. So if you like Paul Bettany, and he's a great actor, I think it's worth seeing. I just don't think the movie's very good, but I think that's
what I thought about The Hand. I'm sorry.
Hand
is great. And the fact that he can act like that with a severed appendage blew me away. I mean, it was an acting lesson. So I know what you're saying.
Yeah, I just think
and also another great acting lesson from Legion is Dennis Quaid.
It's so sad.
Is he? I don't know.
He's
in it. He's in it. He's the guy who runs the diner.
But just to put it together, Dennis Quaid in 1983, Jaws 3D, also had abs of apparently the Archangel Legion.
Yeah, his abs are great.
Good for
those. Like you see his abs in the inner space too.
You do see the abs in the inner space. You see the tush in the inner space as well.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
All right, let's do this segment when bad films happen to good actors.
Okay.
Tracy, do you want me to go first this time?
You go first this time. What did you pick?
All right. So I'm talking about one of the Silent Night, Deadly Night sequels, specifically because I guess all three of these, 3 Better Watch Out, 4 Initiation, and 5 The Toy Maker, arguably maybe were bad things that happened to good actors. But The Toy Maker specifically is a movie that happened to that guy from the movie. Yeah, Mickey Rooney, that guy. So maybe it's not so bad that happened to him. But 3 Better Watch Out, which is terrible. It's really bad. It has Robert Culp.
We love Robert
I love Robert Culp so much, and he was in a lot of bad movies, but he's always good, and he's great in great movies, and he's great in movies like Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice that will forever be argued about its quality, but it will stay something that people argue about.
Yeah, I also want to add in love of Robert. I actually love all the Silent Night, Deadly Nights because, like, obviously I have a sickness. I it doesn't matter how ridiculous they are. I love them. Not just
the remake too. You like the remake?
I actually do. I had fun in it. It's
the remake of what?
Silent Night, Deadly Night.
Oh,
Malcolm McDowell, right? Was like
it's the Santa Claus is a killer in the 80s. In the 80s, it was
Panic.
Yeah, the Christians, the Catholics, and other Christians, evangelicals, protested against Silent Night, Deadly Night. And because they did, they turned this, what is clearly a piece of shit movie,
it's a fun slasher. But here's the part where
it's a fun slasher, but it's a garbage movie.
But here's the part, and I mean, again, this has turned way more into a religious screed, but I just have to say, if you're an evangelical upset because Santa Claus is portrayed as a killer, this is the part where I remind you Santa Claus is not a Christian character. So there's that.
Yeah, well, yeah.
So I'm just saying that's not a thing.
And Christmas is not a Christian holiday, really. And Easter is not really.
By the way, he wasn't born in December. It's a different calendar. Look at your thing.
That's an Easter thing, right?
Here's the thing, though. It's like what I wanted to say about Robert Culp. Almost like I think the great Charles Laughton, right? These were both amazing actors. They both, Charles Laughton and Robert Culp, only directed one movie. Charles Laughton directed Night of the Hunter, which is one of the most exquisite, gorgeous films ever. Movie. And Robert Culp, with his I Spy guy, Bill Cosby, before he was bad for us, did this amazing noir. It's harder to find, but if you can, Hickey and Boggs. Robert Culp.
You can find it. KL Studios put it out on Blu-ray.
Yeah.
It's a good transfer. It's a really good transfer.
What's the movie?
Hickey and Boggs.
It's a 1970s neo-noir set in Los Angeles, private eyes, up to no good. I had the great pleasure of seeing it for the first time on the big screen with my folks in Palm Springs when I was a teenager. Robert Culp was there to introduce the movie, and he was so proud of it, as he rightly should be. And when you see Hickey and Boggs, it's not just that it's cool because it's LA and it's like kind of the era of Elliot Gould doing The Long Goodbye. Mm-hmm. It's that kind of thing where Altman's like, let's re-examine Chandler. But I would argue Hickey and Boggs is one of the best 70s noir movies. And it's the fact that he directed it and he's starring in it, which I think is very hard to expect anybody to do. It's a master. So I really want to put some love on.
Also, it's super interesting to watch now, given Bill Cosby's rather brutal. I'm just saying, like, Bill Cosby seemed to me in Hickey and Boggs to be closer to the real Bill Cosby than most Bill Cosby.
And the problem with seeing it now and knowing what we know is that when it was made, it was a completely different Bill Cosby. So it was seen as a departure. It was seen as like the guy who made white America feel safe, particularly, was going for it. And then maybe somebody knew what we didn't know. Yeah. But it's a great film nonetheless. And Robert Culp, I wish he would have directed another movie. It's fantastic.
I will look that one up. I would like to see that.
All right. So when my thing of when bad films happen to good people,
good actors,
I'm going to add this because Ridley Scott started me off with my film love because #Alien. He did a film not that long ago called The Counselor with Michael Fassbender, Penelope Cruz, Cameron Diaz, Javier Bardem, and Brad Pitt. And I think it's one of the worst films I've ever seen. The Counselor. One of the great casts. It makes no sense. It's brutal. It's ugly. It's disgusting. I have friends that think it's amazing, but it's like I love Eyes Wide Shut and half my friends think I'm insane. So it's that kind of film. It's like the Hillary Clinton of films. You're going to love it. You're going to hate it. I hate it. But it's a great cast and there's nobody better than this cast. So you should at least see it. And watch out for the piano wire scene. That's all I'm going to say. I think it's a great cast and a terrible film. So I thought that fit this category perfectly.
How did I miss that movie? That's
I don't know. Crazy. Look at that cast and they're all so pretty.
Everybody's pretty. Wait, who's the guy in the green jacket? Is that Nick Cage?
That's Javier Bardem, dude.
Oh, it's Javier Bardem.
Yeah.
Javier Bardem's career is very similar to
No Country for Old Men is a pretty.
Oh God, that
Oh yeah, no, yeah, but
Yes.
he's gotten more and more over the top as time has gone by. He reminds me of Nick Cage in a lot of ways.
well,
Not in a bad way.
Something
Like
I just saw.
he's embraced his stardom. He's doing
Jeff Luce. You can rent Hickey and Boggs on Prime and Apple TV. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Everybody, check it out. It's cool.
Well, let's end our show on a positive
So
note.
can I say 3 quick things?
Yeah.
First there was a little blurb that came across the screen while we were on, and it said something like, Dave Florig, try to stay awake.
And
I have no idea what they were talking about unless, looking
I think when we had a video, it looked like you were looking down and she was
okay, so forget that.
She was being
just total anecdotally, because we were talking about The Exorcist.
Don't listen to Anne.
It's
Do
all
not.
good. It's all good.
William Friedkin with The Exorcist. Back when I was a young guy in New York and I worked at the Manhattan Squash Club, I gave William Friedkin racquetball lessons.
No.
So that was kind of cool.
That's awesome.
Third thing, which has nothing to do with this, if I could say, anybody watching this or listening who cares, I did do a sweet little movie called Paradise, A Town of Sinners and Saints. It's a bluegrass musical. It's on Amazon Prime, and if you can, check it out. It's kind of fun.
Awesome.
That's all.
I can't believe you gave Friedkin like squash lessons.
Oh, I did. It was fun.
That's cool. All right.
But you know what was weird is if I'd make a good shot, his head would spin around.
I see what you did there.
No. It was fun. It was kind of cool doing that.
Did you guys go get a French meal afterwards and connect?
No. It was, here's the lesson, and I'll get out of here. Take a shower.
All right.
I'm going to just add, a link to the movie.
Oh, thanks.
On our chat. That's where you get it. It's right there in the chat. Amazon, Paradise Town, Sinners and Saints.
Right.
Get it.
Get it.
For Dave.
We got good reviews on Rotten Tomatoes and all that stuff. It's pretty cool.
All right.
And probably a little offensive.
Oh, we love it.
I love offensive. I live for offensive.
Check it out.
Dude, Todd and I are going to turn into Waldorf and Statler pretty soon. We're all like
I wish we'd been a Waldorf and Statler at that fucking Nazi rally had at the Madison Square Garden the other day. That would have been fun. But let's end on a positive note. The booth, Tracy and I are just going to say movies we think maybe you should see. Dave, please weigh in on whether we're right or wrong. I mean, you can disagree. It's fine. You want me to start?
Yeah, you start.
All right. Here's my boost. So this is another. I always try to find things that relate to the main film. So this is another supernatural religious thriller that could be considered a horror movie, but it also could be considered a thriller film.
I see what you did there.
It's got the late great Heath Ledger. It's called The Order. In other markets, it's called Sin Eater. This is a movie that I resisted when it originally came out. I was like, no, I'm not going to see that. So I waited till video, and then I was like, shit, I wish I'd seen that on the big screen because it's totally fun and totally good. It's the same kind of thing as Stigmata, really. It's that like low-key religious thriller. But in this one, imagine like Gabriel Byrne's character is more the center of this, and it's his becoming as being a sin eater. And Heath Ledger is really good. I
can't believe we lost him. He's like,
me too.
He's aggravatingly good in B movies.
Everything.
Yeah. Does he need to be this good? No. But I think at the same time, for what the movie is, it's a mid-budget, it's a B movie, it's a thriller, it's supposed to be an escape. It's not supposed to make you think, but it will make you think. about your, faith and all that stuff at the same time. I highly recommend. I think it's kind of an underappreciated movie.
Cool.
I love that. You know what? I need to rewatch that. I saw that in the theater, and I remember liking it because I was on that Heath. Like, I felt like, and it's sad to say now, but I remember when I first saw Heath Ledger in some of like 10 Things I Hate About You and things like that started popularizing him. I remember thinking, oh God, he's so good. Like, it's that promise of like that when you saw like River Phoenix and like Running on Empty. Like, they were preternaturally brilliant at a very young age, and clearly had a star thing in addition to craft, which is sometimes not always so easy nowadays. And I just remember thinking, this guy, and so by the time Brokeback came around, and the Joker. I mean, if you want to talk about extremes, like those two performances alone, yeah. This is you're right, and he elevates it just because he's in it. It's like that Gene Hackman role or Morgan Freeman role they shot.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I part of me was like, and I liked A Knight's Tale when it came out, but I was like, oh, Heath Ledger in a religious thriller, that's not going to be as fun as A Knight's Tale, so I'm not going to watch that.
Fair. Okay,
Dave, did you see it?
Which one?
The Order.
No, I did not. But what was the one you said that with? I think Ledger was in it that you said I should watch. What was the one you just said?
A Knight's Tale.
Is that it?
Okay. Yeah, Brian Hegland, who wrote L.A. Confidential with the great Curtis Hanson. He directed and wrote, I believe, Knight's Tale, and it's very irreverent. Like it's like
it's super silly, but
like
it's so much fun.
Songs while they're jousting. It's really
so much fun.
Again, another film that would never get made today that is absolutely deliciously fun. And
right. And The Order is not that, but it is also fun. It's just a very good escape religious.
I think that's the one I was. Yeah, I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, check out The Order. It's also like depending on where you're looking at it to stream, it can also be called The Sin Eater.
Oh,
which is its original title. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, Trace, what's your boost?
My boost, because I was trying to think about like tomorrow is Halloween, so work with me as I get you back to Halloween. What? My thing is the great Michael Powell's Peeping Tom.
Oh yeah, shit.
Peeping Tom came out in 1960 and was overshadowed because Hitchcock's Psycho comes out in the same year. And both films are centered on disturbed young men who may have women issues. We'll leave it there. I think Peeping Tom is the far superior film to Psycho. Apologies. And what's interesting about, again, Michael Powell had already done like Black Narcissus, The Red Shoes. I mean, he's a master English filmmaker on par with David Lean, who was a contemporary. I mean, these guys were making some of the best British films of the era, 50s, 60s, 70s. And there's something about Peeping Tom. It actually really hurt his career because it was seen as almost beneath him, the way we ghettoize thrillers and particularly horror films. So this one straddles both, although I think it's really a horror film. But Peeping Tom is also really important. This is where we get back to Halloween somehow in my brain, where it's one of the first films of the modern era where the killer's point of view is seen. So you've got a young man who literally is a filmmaker who kills ladies with the tripod that has a knife on it, and he's filming it. And it's very upsetting, but the way it's shot is pure cinema. It's like what Fincher does in Seven. We don't see the violence, but you feel like you've seen it because of the aftermath, and it's very powerful. But the point of view of the killer is interesting. And it was one of those films that film nerds, pre everyone having video and easy access, understood. So Bob Clark, when he does 1974's Black Christmas, and the point of view from the killer, like if it calls from inside the house, it wasn't When a Stranger Calls. Black Christmas did it first, but it was the point of view of the killer that was so profound. And I think that's why 74's Black Christmas works. But more importantly, going back to Halloween, John Carpenter was a snob who knew Michael Powell, but he also, like 4 years prior to him doing Halloween, saw what Bob Clark did with Black Christmas, and that becomes the Michael Myers point of view in the opening of Halloween 1978. Happy Halloween a day ahead of time, and that's how we tie Peeping Tom 1960 into John Carpenter's 1978.
Nice. That's
and where can you find this movie?
Jeff will probably find it. You can buy it on Criterion, I believe, but you can stream it. It used to be able to be very streamable.
Okay.
I'll bet for sure you can stream a not great copy of it on YouTube.
And
Okay.
yeah, and it's powerful. I mean, it's about the point of view, but it's really it's
Yeah.
Michael Powell. Like if you see like Black Narcissus, and then he's there, and he almost had to apologize for the film. Like he didn't work for a bit because people thought he went a little gutter. And the truth is, he made one of the best horror films in my mind, like ever. And
Yeah,
so
it's good.
if you like horror films, like this is the progenitor of so many things that you may not know that they were, you know.
Did you ever see the remake of Maniac?
Yes, I did. But I have a thing for Maniac. It's so like you feel dirty and have to take a Silkwood shower.
Oh,
later.
dirty. So Maniac is so dirty and gross, but
So
I
dirty.
really liked the remake where they went full hog on the POV and you only see Elijah Wood, who's the maniac, when he's looking at himself in mirrors.
Yes, and
I thought that was really cool.
And that's a plot device that they did in a noir film where the detective you only see him in the mirror, and they borrowed that. And I thought that was a film nerd thing too that I love. But I just think it's fun because, especially people like Ryan Murphy, you know, films or TV shows, like he borrows from a lot of things, and I think it's fun to go back and see the first folks who did it. So that's why we boost, you know. Peeping Tom should be talked about, I think, in as favorably as Psycho. I think it's a better film, but it's interesting. It got overshadowed. Like to me, like when Seven came out, like in '95, it's obviously brilliant. But I would argue for me, the one I watch more because it's not quite as sadistic is Copycat, which is a little bit more of a journeyman's film. It's a John Emile film, Sigourney Weaver, Holly Hunter, two female protagonists.
You just watch that more because it's got Sigourney Weaver.
Why wouldn't you watch anything with Sigourney Weaver?
I'm not saying, but let's just be honest about what I mean. You can say all the things you want about it.
But it's a good movie, man. It's one of my favorites where you're like,
Copycat's very fun.
It's creepy fun, but like it's I think had that come out before Seven, it would be different. So anyway,
that's a hard question. It's because Seven's really good, but Seven's also got a lot of problems.
It's so dark, man.
How did they not know that there was a subway that went by every 5 minutes when they checked out the apartment? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. It will never make sense.
They're detectives who can't detect.
Yeah, I guess so. So thank you, Dave, very much for doing the show. Dave Florek.
Thank you.
Remember,
it was a lot more fun than I ever thought it would be. So
I'm glad you had a good time.
I did.
Was it? Go ahead.
No, I just said I had more fun. It was great. I really had a good time.
We didn't scare you. Come back.
I wanted to remind everyone to look in the comments for Paradise Town, Sinners and Saints.
Yeah.
The musical that Dave is in, movie. Check it out, rent it, and give it good reviews.
Yeah,
you can rent it and not like it, but if you don't like it, just don't say anything.
It's like the shittiest movie you liked.
Yeah.
There you go.
It's a good movie.
5 stars. Shittiest movie I liked.
It's fun. It's really
amazing.
fun.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Always, Todd. Lively to spend a night with you. And Dave, so lovely to meet you. Thanks for doing the show and bringing this film.
Thank you.
Yeah,
so
thanks for Stigmata.
Yeah, and everybody listening, stay tuned. There will be a special bonus where Rupert Wainwright, the director of Stigmata, breaks a lot of stuff down.
Yeah,
it's good stuff.
We'll post that separately, the video, and then I'll add the audio onto the podcast.
Yeah, and Rupert, thank you so much for indulging us with the title of our podcast and celebrating your film. All right.
It was a great movie. Thanks a lot, Todd. And
all right.
Tracy, thank you so much. I had a great time.
You guys. All right. Have a good night.
Peace out.